God sees every tear you've cried, even the ones you tried to hide from the world. He knows the silent struggles that weigh on your heart, the burdens you carry that no one else seems to notice. You may have smiled in front of others, pretending everything is fine, but deep inside, you feel broken, lost, and weary. And yet, in the midst of that pain, God is watching over you. Every tear that falls from your eyes is seen by the one who created you, the one who understands the depth of your sorrow even when you can't find the words to express it. There are moments in life when you wonder if anyone truly cares, when the people you counted on have disappeared, when the support you expected never came, when the prayers you whispered seem to go unanswered. It can feel like you're walking through a season of loneliness, carrying a weight too heavy to bear. But you are not alone. God has been with you through every painful moment, through every night of desperation, through every unanswered question. He has seen every tear that fell when you felt unseen, every heartbreak that made you question your purpose, every setback that left you wondering if things would ever change. God's love is so deep that He doesn't just notice your pain, He feels it with you. The Bible tells us in Psalm 56:8, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." That means no tear is wasted. Every moment of pain, every struggle, every disappointment, it all matters to God. He is not distant or indifferent to your suffering. He is near, closer than you realize, walking with you through every valley, holding you even when you feel like falling apart. Sometimes it's easy to believe that pain means God has abandoned you, that if He truly saw you, He would have stepped in by now, that if He really cared, you wouldn't be struggling like this. But faith is not about what you see, it's about trusting what you know. And what you must know is that God is faithful. Just because you don't see Him working doesn't mean He isn't moving on your behalf. Just because the pain hasn't ended yet doesn't mean He has forgotten you. He is not ignoring your tears. He is storing them, treasuring them, and turning them into something greater than you can imagine. Pain has a way of making us feel isolated, as if no one else understands what we're going through. But God does. He understands the heartbreak of betrayal. He knows the sting of rejection. He has felt the weight of sorrow. And because He knows, He can comfort you in a way that no one else can. When the world tells you to be strong, to move on, to forget what hurts you, God invites you to bring your pain to Him. He doesn't rush you through the healing process or minimize your suffering. He holds you through it, reminding you that your pain is not meaningless. There is a purpose in your tears, even if you can't see it yet. There is a plan unfolding, even if you feel stuck in the waiting. God does not waste suffering. He uses it to shape, refine, and strengthen you. He sees what you're going through, and He is not indifferent to your pain. His heart breaks when yours does. His compassion reaches beyond what you can comprehend. And while it may not feel like it now, He is preparing something greater for you. Every tear, every struggle, every moment of brokenness is seen, and in God's hands, nothing is ever wasted. Pain is never without purpose, even when it feels unbearable. Every struggle, every hardship, every disappointment is shaping you in ways you may not yet understand. Life has a way of breaking us down, making us question why we have to go through so much suffering. But God does not allow pain without reason. He is not cruel, and He does not take pleasure in watching you struggle. Instead, He is using every difficult moment to refine you, to mold you into the person He created you to be. There is something being built within you, even in the midst of your suffering. When you face trials, it's easy to wonder why God allows them to happen. You pray for relief, yet the burden remains. You ask for the storm to pass, yet it keeps raging on. You cry out for an answer, yet heaven seems silent. But just because you don't see the purpose now, doesn't mean there isn't one. Some of the greatest lessons in life are learned in the darkest seasons. Strength is not built in comfort. Faith is not deepened in ease. Growth does not happen when everything is going perfectly. It is in the struggle that you are being shaped, in the hardship that you are being refined, in the pain that your faith is being tested and strengthened. God is always more concerned with your character than your comfort. He is more interested in who you are becoming than in making sure you never experience hardship. The pain you are walking through is not meant to destroy you, but to develop you. Every great story in the Bible includes a season of struggle. Joseph was betrayed and thrown into a pit before he ever reached the palace. Moses wandered through the wilderness before he ever stepped into his calling. Job lost everything before he saw God restore him. And Jesus himself endured the cross before the resurrection. In every case, the suffering was not the end of the story. It was part of the journey towards something greater. Pain reveals what is inside of you. It shows your true character, your real faith, your deepest beliefs. When everything is going well, it's easy to say you trust God. But when life falls apart, when things don't go according to plan, that is when true faith is tested. Will you still believe in God's goodness when you are in pain? Will you still trust His plan when nothing makes sense? Will you still hold on to His promises when all you see is brokenness? These are the moments when your faith is refined, when your trust in God is no longer just words but something real and deep within you. Suffering also has a way of drawing you closer to God. When everything is going well, it's easy to become distracted, to forget your dependence on Him. But when you are broken, when you have nowhere else to turn, that is when you truly seek Him. That is when your prayers become more than routine, when your heart cries out to Him with desperation and sincerity. Pain has a way of stripping away everything that doesn't matter and bringing you back to the only thing that does, your relationship with God. God sees what you cannot. He knows what is ahead. He knows what you need to go through in order to become who you were meant to be. Sometimes the very thing you are asking Him to remove is the thing He is using to prepare you. The struggles you are facing today may be the foundation for the strength you will need tomorrow. God is not ignoring your pain. He is using it. He is turning it into something that will bless you in ways you cannot yet see. The fire you are walking through is refining you, purifying you, preparing you. And though it may hurt now, there is something greater being formed within you. Faith is the foundation upon which miracles are built. Without faith, doubt creeps in, fear takes over, and the weight of circumstances begins to feel impossible to bear. But faith shifts the atmosphere. Faith opens the door for God to move in ways that human understanding cannot explain. It is faith that allowed Peter to walk on water. It is faith that made the walls of Jericho fall. It is faith that led the woman who had been suffering for 12 years to reach out and touch the hem of Jesus' garment, believing she would be healed. Again and again, the Bible shows that miracles are not just about God's power, but about the faith of those who believe in Him. Faith is not just about saying you trust God. It is about acting like you do. It is about standing firm even when nothing seems to be changing. It is about believing in His promises even when your reality looks the opposite of what you are praying for. It is about praising Him before the breakthrough comes, before the answer arrives, before the miracle is visible. The kind of faith that moves mountains is not just hopeful wishing. It is an unshakable trust that God is who He says He is and that He will do what He has promised. Many people wait until they see the miracle before they believe, but that is not how faith works. Faith is believing before it happens. Faith is trusting when there is no proof, no evidence, no sign that things are changing. It is holding on to God's word even when everything in you wants to give up. It is refusing to let go of hope even when the situation looks impossible. God honors that kind of faith. He responds to it. Over and over in Scripture, Jesus tells people, your faith has made you well. He does not say your circumstances changed and made you well. He does not say everything worked out first and then you were healed. No, He says your faith, because faith is the key that unlocks the miraculous. Faith is not about ignoring reality or pretending everything is fine. It is about choosing to trust God more than you trust what you see. The enemy will try to use your circumstances to make you doubt, to make you question whether God really hears you, whether He really cares. But faith is choosing to believe that God is bigger than your circumstances. It is declaring that He is greater than the sickness, greater than the struggle, greater than the storm. It is deciding that no matter what happens, you will trust Him. When you are believing for a miracle, the enemy will attack your faith. He will whisper lies that tell you it's too late, that nothing will change, that you are wasting your time praying and believing. He will try to make you feel foolish for holding on to hope. But faith is not about what the enemy says. It is about what God has promised. And God's promises are sure. His timing is perfect. His power is unlimited. What seems impossible to man is possible with God. Faith requires action. It is not passive. It does not just sit back and wait. It moves forward in trust. The blind man cried out to Jesus. The woman with the issue of blood pushed through the crowd. The paralyzed man's friends tore through a roof to lower him down to Jesus. They did not just wish for a miracle. They acted in faith. And their faith prepared the way for the impossible to happen. Faith is stepping out before the door opens. It is trusting God enough to move forward even when you don't see the whole picture. It is taking that first step, believing that God will meet you there. When prayers seem to go unanswered and struggles continue longer than expected, it is easy to feel like God is saying no, but a delay is not the same as a denial. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. God's timing is not our timing, and His ways are far beyond what we can comprehend. What may seem like a delay is often God working behind the scenes, aligning things perfectly, preparing the way, and strengthening you for what is to come. Waiting is one of the hardest things to do, especially when you are believing for something deeply. It can feel like nothing is changing, like your prayers are hitting a wall, like God is silent. But silence does not mean absence. God hears every prayer. He sees every tear. He knows every desire of your heart. What seems like a delay is often a time of preparation. There are things you cannot see, things God is orchestrating for your good. Sometimes He is protecting you from something you don't even realize. Other times He is making sure that when the blessing comes, you are ready to receive it. Faith is tested in the waiting. It is easy to trust God when the answer comes quickly, when things fall into place without struggle. But real faith is built in seasons of waiting. It is in those moments when doubt tries to creep in, when the enemy whispers that God has forgotten you, that faith must rise up and declare that God is still in control. The enemy wants you to give up before the breakthrough, to walk away before the miracle happens. But the delay is not meant to discourage you. It is meant to strengthen you. God's delays are not wasted time. They are opportunities for growth, for deeper faith, for a stronger relationship with Him. Joseph spent years in prison before he stepped into the position God had prepared for him. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before leading the Israelites to freedom. David was anointed as king long before he ever sat on the throne. In each case, the waiting was not a punishment. It was preparation. They had to go through a process that refined them, shaped them, and positioned them for what was coming. If they had received the promise too soon, they wouldn't have been ready to carry it. Waiting on God requires trust. It requires surrendering the need to control everything and believing that God knows best. It requires letting go of your own timeline and accepting that His timing is perfect. It is not easy, and it often does not make sense in the moment. But when you look back, you will see that every delay had a purpose. The times you thought God was ignoring you were actually the times He was working the most. The moments you thought nothing was happening were the moments He was setting things in motion for your good. God does not withhold good things from His children. He does not dangle promises in front of you just to take them away. If something is delayed, it is because there is a reason. Maybe He is protecting you. Maybe He is preparing you. Maybe the timing is not right. Whatever the reason, you can be sure that God has not forgotten you. He is not ignoring your prayers. He is not indifferent to your struggles. He is working even when you can't see it. The answer may not come the way you expect, and it may not come when you want it to, but it will come in the way that is best for you. Struggles have a way of breaking a person down, making them feel like they will never escape the pain they are in. When life keeps throwing obstacle after obstacle, it becomes easy to wonder if things will ever get better. But the darkest moments are often the ones that come right before the breakthrough. The pain, the setbacks, the disappointments, they are not signs that God has forgotten you. They are signs that something greater is coming. Every great victory is preceded by a battle. Every testimony is shaped in the midst of a test. Every breakthrough comes after a season of struggle. God never promised that life would be easy, but He did promise that He would never leave you. When you walk through trials, when you face storms that seem impossible to endure, He is right there with you. The enemy wants you to believe that your struggle is proof that you are alone, that God has abandoned you, that there is no purpose in your pain. But the truth is, God often does His greatest work in the middle of the struggle. He does not waste suffering. He uses it to shape you, to strengthen you, to prepare you for what is coming next. It can be hard to see the purpose when you are in the middle of a storm, when things are falling apart, when nothing seems to be going right, when you have prayed and believed and still see no change. That is when doubt tries to creep in. But just because you do not see progress does not mean there is none. A seed does not sprout the moment it is planted. It stays buried in the dark, going through a process that is unseen, but beneath the surface it is growing, developing roots, preparing to break through the soil. Your struggle is that process. It may feel like you are buried, but you are actually being prepared for something greater. The enemy does not attack those who have nothing ahead of them. He attacks those who are on the verge of something big. If you are facing opposition, if you are in the middle of a season where everything seems to be going wrong, take it as a sign that you are on the brink of something significant. The greater the struggle, the greater the breakthrough. The enemy would not be fighting you this hard if there was not something valuable on the other side of it. He knows that if you keep going, if you keep believing, if you refuse to give up, you will step into the promise God has for you. Pain has a way of revealing who you really are. It strips away everything false and forces you to rely on God in a way you never have before. When things are easy, it is simple to say you have faith. But when everything is falling apart, that is when real faith is tested. Will you trust God even when you do not understand? Will you keep believing even when you do not see the answer yet? Will you hold on when everything in you wants to give up? These moments of struggle are where true faith is built. They are where your trust in God becomes stronger, where your relationship with Him deepens, where you learn to rely on Him completely. The process of struggle is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to strengthen you. It is forging endurance, perseverance, and character within you. The very things that were meant to break you are the things that will build you. The challenges you are facing now are shaping you into the person who will be able to handle the blessings that are coming. You may not understand it now, and you may not see the full picture yet, but when you look back, you will realize that every trial was preparing you for the breakthrough that was always meant to be yours. When life gets overwhelming, when the pain feels unbearable, when you have done everything you can and still see no change, that is the moment when you must hold on the tightest. It is easy to trust God when things are going well, when doors are opening, when prayers are being answered. But real faith is tested in the moments of struggle, in the seasons of waiting, in the times when nothing makes sense. Holding on when everything inside of you wants to give up is not just about endurance, it is about trust. It is about believing that God is still in control, even when your situation looks hopeless. There will be moments when you feel like you are at the end of your strength. You have prayed, you have believed, you have fought, and yet things seem to be getting worse instead of better. That is when doubt starts creeping in. The enemy will whisper that God has forgotten you, that He does not care, that your prayers are pointless. He wants to weaken your faith, to make you question whether it is even worth holding on. But the moment when you feel the weakest is often the moment right before the breakthrough. The enemy knows that if you keep holding on, if you keep trusting God, you will step into something greater. That is why He fights you the hardest when you are closest to your victory. God never promised that life would be free of struggles, but He did promise that He would walk through them with you. When the fire feels too hot, when the waters feel too deep, He is still there. He has not abandoned you, even if you cannot feel His presence. Sometimes God is quiet, not because He is absent, but because He is working. He is preparing things in ways you cannot see. He is aligning people, circumstances, and opportunities that you do not even know about yet. Just because you do not see the answer now does not mean that it is not coming. Holding on to faith in difficult times requires a decision. It is not based on emotions because emotions will tell you to give up. It is not based on circumstances because circumstances will make you doubt. It is a choice to trust even when nothing seems to be changing. It is a decision to keep going even when the road ahead looks uncertain. The Bible is filled with stories of people who had to hold on when things seemed impossible. Abraham had to believe in God's promise for years before it came to pass. Joseph had to endure betrayal, false accusations, and imprisonment before he saw his purpose fulfilled. Job lost everything, yet he refused to curse God and turn away. Every one of them faced moments where giving up would have been easier, but because they held on, they saw the faithfulness of God in ways they never imagined. The enemy wants you to believe that your pain is permanent, that your situation will never change, that there is no reason to keep believing. But he is a liar. God's promises are true, and his plans for you are good. The trial you are facing is not the end of your story. The pain you are feeling will not last forever. The season of struggle is temporary, but what God is doing through it will last. He is strengthening your faith, building your endurance, preparing you for something bigger than you can see right now. When you feel weak, when you feel like you cannot take another step, remember that you are not carrying this burden alone. God is with you. He is holding you up when you feel like falling. He is working behind the scenes when you cannot see a way forward. He is not asking you to have all the answers. He's asking you to trust him. He is asking you to keep holding on, to keep believing, to keep pressing forward, because what he has promised is still on its way.